So Carl started working on the boat as the Manta 4 skipper, and he was very good. Me and Oliver just continued to work together. The trips were going absolutely brilliantly. People were just absolutely delighted. On a couple of occasions, we saw Oliver pointed out a couple of whale sharks, and we were able to get into the water with them and have a bit of a swim. Loads of dolphins. We had more pilot whales. We saw eagle rays on some of the trips heading out to Turnef. It was just brilliant. You couldn't have wrote this stuff. It was just absolutely amazing. Tim, Amanda's ex-husband, had started to date a woman over on the mainland, and they were getting on really, really well. And Amanda didn't like that. She got to hear about it and she didn't like it. And she began to come down to the dock when the Manta 4 was pulling in. She'd never done that before. For the 3 or 4 trips that Cal had taken with us. I didn't really like Cal, to be honest. He was a nice enough guy, but he used to throw me side eyes, and he would throw all of us side eyes, and he would tell us, like we were young squaddies, and start trying to tell us what to do, not ask us how to get things done, but start barking orders at us and stuff. And I straightened him up and I told him, I said, "You're the skipper on the boat, mate." I said, Oliver and I have been on the boat long before you've been here, and we know the routine, we know what to do. And he kind of didn't like that. So we all worked together as best as we could. The aim for us as a team was to make sure that the customers and the clients had a brilliant time, that everybody was safe, and that everybody returned to the boat after the dives, after the snorkeling, had great food, just had great times, and went home safely. That was it. We knew that we were going to get tipped. It wasn't about the tips, really. I had been down there, to get money for certain, and to build up, a bit of wealth for myself, and to put money away for a rainy day, because I had never had that much money in my life growing up. I'd never had that, and to me, it wasn't that I became greedy. It's because I'd never had it and I wanted it. And David just kind of warned me. He says, "Cole, don't get overtaken by the money, that we're making. You know what I mean?" He says, "There's always going to be money. We're always going to make money." He says, he says, as a friend, he goes, "I'll always make sure," he says, that you have money, that you come first." He goes, "For me," he says, "apart from his boys and obviously Sue, his marriage and stuff." He says, "Where work is concerned," he says, "I know that I can trust you." He says, "I know if I need you at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be there, Cole." He says, "So don't worry." He says, "I've got your back." And I told him the same thing. I says, "I've got your back as well, Dave." So life was getting, very prosperous for us, and I enjoyed, working with Oliver. Me and Oliver had a great laugh. Cal tended to not really integrate with anybody on the boat. He would answer questions because he's very knowledgeable about the Blue Hole, and he was very knowledgeable about Turnef and also Lighthouse Reef. Cal had been down there obviously for a few years. He'd been down there with the British Army as well, and so Cal was very polite to people. Kind of forced himself sometimes to answer questions, and Cal just would disassociate himself with the groups and stuff. The kind of the same way I did when I started working on the boat. I just didn't know how to be around people, and it's not that Cal didn't want to be around or didn't know how to be around people. He just didn't seem to want to join in. So him and Jackie, the cook, would stand off. I'd bring Jackie over, and get her into the group chats with us and stuff like that, and people would thank her for the food, and she was quite shy, and she was very grateful, and she was very humble when people gave her compliments. She didn't really know how to take them. Found out that Jackie's husband was very abusive to her, and that he had started taking money off her when she was going home, so basically leaving her with nothing, and You know, I never seen the guy. I didn't know who he was. If he stood and spat in my face in the street, I would have known who he was. But apparently, as soon as she came home, the money was in his hand, and he was out down the cantinas drinking, shooting pool, snorting coke, or you know, whatever he was doing. Because the places that apparently he went into were, you know, little drug dens and stuff, or supposedly little dens of iniquity. So you know, she was kind of like out of the frying pan and into the fire as well. So Tim, Amanda's ex, had started seeing somebody. Amanda had started to come down the dock when the boat was coming in. Cal would radio ahead once we had left the Blue Hole, and everybody was settled in, and the food was over, and the place was clean, and people were resting. Then a few miles once we navigated off the atoll and out into the deep sea, Cal would radio ahead and just let them know our ETA and return time. And David and Sue sometimes. Sue didn't always come down, but Dave, Dick and Gary, Tamara was there once or twice. Didn't say nothing till it was buttoned. But there was a couple of Dutch people, German people on the boat one trip, and she got into a full-blown conversation with them and just basically took over everything. And they chit-chatted away with each other. Didn't do any harm, but you know, they chit-chatted away and stuff. And I'm sure she was pumping them. How were the crew? You know, how was the food? You know, how was the entertainment? You know, this blah 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 blah. You know, she was digging, and she was also trying to poach our divers. By trying to get them to go down to Tortuga, which means turtle in Spanish, I think, to go and dive with them. But they were steadfast and resilient, and you know, they stayed with us, which was really good. So Amanda started coming down the dock as we were there, hugging all over Cal and all this type of stuff, and you know, that was whatever. So that was how life went for a little bit. It went on like that for about 4 months, very, very smoothly. David couldn't really stop anybody coming on the dock. He didn't own the dock, okay? He owned the dive center or rented the space on the dive center or the dock, sorry, where we built the dive center. So he didn't own the dock. So he couldn't really tell anybody to come on or off it. You know what I mean? If he'd had a problem with anybody, you know, causing drama or anything, David could have went up to Eddie at the Belize Yacht Club and just says, look, Eddie, having a problem with this person, you know, can you have a security guard on the dock and restrict this person coming down because it's causing us too much drama? Eddie would have done that for David, no problem. But David wasn't an asshole, and knew his limitations, and you know, so that was how that went really. You couldn't really stop anybody going down on the docks. They were privately owned, but they were also public. People could walk down them, could go to the end of the dock, sit down, you know, have a picnic, have a beer, you know, have a Coke or whatever, enjoy the water, because that's how Belize and San Pedro prospered. You don't turn people away. So life carried on. We started working with Cal in January, not long after Christmas, New Year. After Tim was given the hike, and we worked through till April, May, and things were getting really, really heavy with divers and stuff. The Manta 4 prospered big time. You know, it took a lot of divers away from other people, from other dive shops, and it really began to cause quite a commotion and quite a stir among the locals. Nothing that David could do about it. It's just the way that it was. People were free to choose who they were going to dive with. Obviously, there came a town meeting about this, and me and Gary and Dick and Dave were invited to go to the meeting. So I'd never been to one. Dave and Gary and Dick had been to them before. Dick was well known on the island. Dick was really well known. He was a multi-millionaire. He had a lot of pull on the island. People with money had a lot of pull, and they weren't pushed around at all, you know, because they are the people that had invested money, you know, in Belize, for buying houses, for buying property, for buying land, for bringing people down, you know what I mean, and just putting a lot of money back into the economy. So they invited us down anyway, to the meeting.